Hello, friends. This podcast is entirely supporter funded. And what that means is that our ability to book guests, put human hours into interviewing women around the world, and edit each woman's story into a compelling episode. All of that comes down to a community of people who enjoy the show and give back so we can continue to create it. We hope to earn your support. We hope you see and feel what we are trying to do here, that it is important and unique and needed. If you'd like to help us continue to make and build this show, please go to www.patreon.com/ifyouknewme. And if you can't, it's okay. Here's the episode. I'm Jamie Younger, and this is If You Knew Me, a podcast about the inner lives of women. I'm excited to announce that this episode is number 34, and it's the final episode of our show's third season. Pete and I will pick back up with the fourth season in the new year. We'll be back on January 6th, 2023, with an entirely new set of stories. In the meantime, we would love to stay in touch with you. I highly recommend that you sign up for our newsletter. We send it out just once a month, so just enough to keep you abreast of fun updates. You can sign up for the newsletter in the show notes. Well, as you know, most weeks on this show, we walk into the heart and mind of one woman. Our guest can choose to share her real name or to stay anonymous. Other weeks, we offer interview-based episodes with experts on themes that are relevant to women's lives. This week, we hear from Theo Manusaride. That's her real name. Theo is actually the photographer who Pete and I hired to take photos of our wedding this past July. When we first talked to Theo, we were taken aback by how genuine, curious, and kind-hearted she was. And apart from being a superb human being, she is an outstanding photographer. After seeing her work, we knew we needed to somehow, some way, collaborate with her. Before long, Pete and I dreamed up the idea of creating a photography book with stunning portraits of women from this podcast, alongside their stories. Of course, we immediately thought of Theo, and luckily, she was totally game to do the book with us. A few weeks ago, we worked together with Theo to photograph the first woman for the book, which happens to be Brenda Vandenberg, for those of you who know her from episode number 1. While we were sitting there with Brenda, we realized that we needed to share Theo's story with the world. She's not just a photographer on this book project, she is an essential element of this initiative. So that's what we've done. This is Theo's story. It's about how she grew up in Romania, how she left her home country, and why. And maybe mostly, it's about why she's creating a new life and a new kind of work. Theo's story is entitled, I Only Had 2 Left Slippers.
Well, I'm a 35-year-old woman born in communist Romania. I grew up in the 90s after Romania kind of managed to beat communists and the Red Curtain fell and all of East Europe went through a period of big changes. So I lived with 2 parents who were trying to understand what's going on and put their lives back together after everything changed. And I think this is partly a story of a lot of Eastern Europeans who grew up in the 90s. They grew up alone, kind of trying to figure things out for themselves. And that's what I did, I think, a lot. Yeah, I'm a photographer, shooting passionately for the past 15 years, with a lot of hiccups, of course. I'm a dog person. I'm a cat owner. I'm a very shy person. I'm, not used to talking about myself. And I have few friends, but those are my inner circle. So this is first for me. And I'm a bit nervous. With the economy changing, a lot of people in their 30s who already had jobs, because the Communist Party would provide them with those jobs, lost everything. Like they lost their meaning, they lost their jobs, they didn't know what to do. And a lot of the industry, which was part of what Romania was built on at that time, collapsed. So also the same jobs that were available before the 90s stopped being available then. And everybody kind of tried to survive somehow. My parents, for example, they sold oranges on the street for a couple of years. And then my mom started working in a exchange store, like the ones you go to change money at. So yeah, that was kind of a chaos. And a lot of kids were being brought up by their grandparents, if any. And a lot of them were actually growing up by themselves with the key around their neck, going to school and back from school alone. Well, I had my grandma, but I think I miss my parents a lot, especially my mom. My dad was working for the radio, and he was also a journalist. But he was in between jobs a lot. He had some passions. He was also a very good writer. He wrote a couple of books later in his life. Travel books, mainly. That's what he was passionate about. So yeah, he was kind of in between jobs. My mom was the steady earner, let's say, in the 90s. And yeah, it was very weird times. I remember never growing up with slippers that were the same because my dad tried to import something from China and he only had samples. So I only had 2 left slippers or 2 right slippers, and they were never looking the same. It was, yeah, interesting now that I think about it. But I remember it was a bit stressful at that time, and seeing them being so scared and anxious all the time, I think I also learned that behavior from them. I'm a pretty anxious person myself. I worry a lot. I'm not good with uncertainty. I try to plan things very thoroughly, so I know exactly what's going to happen. So I do have a need for control, and I think that translated later into my life with not being able to, well, at least in my opinion, have a proper job. So I became a freelance artist. I grew up with my mom and my dad. My mom is Romanian. My dad was actually Greek. So his parents were refugees coming from different parts of Greece. They went through 2 rounds of moving from one country to another, actually. And I think on that side of the family, at least, the general idea was that you need to survive no matter what, and you need to do what you need to do. And my grandfather was a very big supporter of the classical, go to college, get a good degree, maybe something in economy or law, or become an engineer, something that's always going to be there, have a proper job. And yeah, I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do and what I was good at. And I think I kind of took safe routes with economics, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I started working as an intern in an advertising agency, and I got my first burnout after 4 months of working there, I think. And then I decided I didn't want to have a proper job like that. It was too stressful for me. I was always into photography. I had my camera with me all the time, and it seemed like a natural way to solve my problem, especially because at that point in Romania, there were not a lot of good photographers, wedding photographers at least. And I saw an opportunity. I remember first couple of months I started doing this. I was still living with my parents. I think I left home around age 24. I remember coming home, my mother and my father were sleeping in the living room, which was the first room you would see when you entered the house. So I always tried to be very careful and not make a lot of noise when I entered the house. And it was usually 2 or 3 or 4, 5 a.m., usually more like 5 a.m. when I came back from a wedding. And my dad would yell at me that I woke him up and so tell me I stopped coming home so late. I was like, I was working. But at some point, he kind of realized, I guess, that it was actually a job. It was a business. So he was on board. I read some photographers' stories that kept telling everybody, don't go into this business. It's not going to work out. You're not going to have a job. Or if you want to do something in photography, just do weddings. Those will always bring money. So that was actually a very rational decision on my part. It was also easy, I think, because I do have quite specific aesthetical taste. I think I had good taste, at least from what I could see from what was presented on as options for wedding photography back then. Yeah, I saw a lot of improvement. So I think it was just a rational decision based on the information I could gather at that point. It was not a magical, fell into my lap, perfect job, but I grew to love it. After a couple of burnouts, of course. So the first one was when I was working for the advertising agency. I was working maybe 12, 14 hours a day, only for a couple of months, but that was enough for my burnout. And then I had another couple of burnouts, 2015 and 2018, I think, if I remember correctly. And my dad also died in 2018, and that was a big game changer for me. And it kind of put me off track and put me on another track, though. We always had a very turbulent relationship. My dad was very passionate and sensitive, but also a bit verbally abusive, to say the least. So we were constantly fighting. He was constantly fighting with my mom when I was little, and when I grew up, he was constantly fighting with me. And I had, as he used to say, a problem with authority, but I just had a problem with lack of respect, I think, and was demanding it. So he didn't have an easy parenting life with me, I think. But yeah, I grew up with him a lot more at home than my mom. So I think he was a big part of my life. And I always wanted us to get along. I never wanted him out of my life. It was just very difficult to have a close relationship. So I think I always wanted that. And I always regretted not being able to have a good relationship with him. And somehow his death being so sudden and tragic, he was only 62 and he had a heart attack. So it was very abrupt. And I think part of the reason why it shook me so much is because I'm very sensitive. Some people will say highly sensitive, weirdly sensitive. But also because I always loved him, even if we had a tough relationship. And yeah, it kind of put the things in perspective for me and made me question my life choices. And I started being a lot more intentional in my life. It taught me a lot of things. Or maybe I just wanted to take something good out of it because it was traumatic, honestly. Also for my mom, I don't have brothers, I don't have sisters. My dad didn't have brothers or sisters. So kind of the family disappeared. I was in a serious relationship back then, and we were thinking of moving out from Romania, but we weren't sure. And since my dad's death was a bit weird, so the situation was a bit weird. He died in a hospital in the emergency room. I assume at least that he might not have been properly taken care of. So I had my doubts and my fears about healthcare in Romania for a long time, and that just kind of was the last drop. So we decided to move. We really wanted to be able to have a decent life in general with public services and nature around and less pollution and proper care if we get sick. So I think that those are human rights, and I wanted what was respectful for a human being. And I think that was the moment we decided to leave. And yeah, I got married to my then boyfriend, and I was still grieving after my father. I don't remember anything for the first 6 months, maybe after he died. I was in total shock. I've seen pictures of myself around that time and I looked like a ghost. And honestly, I don't remember anything from that time. So I probably was a ghost. Yeah, so I got married. We settled on moving to the Netherlands. I was going to start a new photography business here. I had a pretty good business in Romania. It was going very well. And that was part of the challenge, the biggest challenge, the leaving that behind, burying that business and starting anew. Yeah, so I did that. And because we were freelancer, the both of us, we couldn't easily get rent here. So I also sold my apartment. Everything was on the move. And then I was still struggling with my feelings about my father's death and what that meant, because I didn't feel at ease, but I didn't know exactly what was going on in my head and in my heart. I think I started to realize that I wasn't happy in many aspects of my life, and I wasn't happy with the photography I was doing. I was doing a lot of how it looks images for weddings, the pretty shoes, the nice dress, the great makeup, the tons of flowers, and it was empty somehow for me. It didn't have soul. It didn't have anything I was interested in. There was no connection. There was only pretty stuff, which was pretty. Pretty stuff is pretty, but that's it. So I've been on this self-knowledge journey for a while, and on that journey I also decided that I was happy in my relationship. So my dad died in 2018 and I moved to the Netherlands on my own in 2020, starting a new photography business, doing what I like, which is documentary photography. I feel like I still miss home, but home is not in Romania and home is not in the Netherlands yet. So I'm kind of in between homes right now in a more spiritual way. I think I'm still scared of going out and trying to live my life in the Netherlands because I'm not exactly over my home country, but at the same time, when I go back there, I don't really feel well. I don't feel I belong. I never felt I belong in that society. The biggest mentality we cherish back there is you can make it if you struggle and you do whatever you need to do to survive. And I like being nice, and being nice didn't work with do whatever you can to survive. So I'm actually very happy and appreciative of the idea that everybody should do well in the Netherlands. So I'm more at home here in a lot of ways than I was back there. I'm a lot more intentional with my life. I'm very careful with how I spend my time, with the people I have in my life, with the assignments I take, with, just how life is going. I pay a lot more attention to what's going on day by day, and I try not to let a day go by without me paying attention to it and without living, actually being present in my life. And that sometimes means that I'm going to work less hours because I just want to spend quality time with my cat who was sick, or I'm just going to take half a day off and not go to do a photo shoot because I need to spend time in nature. In my life, a couple of years ago, I wasn't able to do that because there were so many things happening all the time that you just didn't have time to breathe. And I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the busyness of every day and kind of forget to pay attention to what is actually happening to them. And I try to do that. I think it brings me balance and peace of mind and less regrets. I'm very careful about the people I work with, and by no means that doesn't mean I choose who I work with based on anything else than same values, the same way of seeing life. People are important, relationships are important. Money doesn't matter so much. The time we get to spend together and the time we get to be present in our lives is what matters the most. And when choosing people like this, I immediately feel a greater connection, and I tend to observe them while I work in a way that I can connect with their inner lives. It's like a form of meditation that allows me to be curious about the world, but in a way that I choose what I want to be curious about. I don't want to be curious about the shoes and the prettiness. I want to be curious about the relationships and the hugs and the moments and the tears and the talks and the beer drinking and the storytelling and people being together and spending quality time, because that quality time might not ever come back. That might be it. That might be the last time. I see things like that now. I think I was confronted with my mortality as well as other things after my dad died. I value things that have no mercantile value. So when I choose people and they choose me, I feel like I'm not wasting that time. I feel like we're on the same page and we can connect, and my work is better because the values that those people have, I share, and we are on the same page, and everything just falls together beautifully and seamlessly most of the time. Most of the time. The funniest thing is that when I'm in a good mood about my move to the Netherlands and me living in the Netherlands, I say I'm an expat. And when I'm in a bad mood or I have negative thoughts about being here, I say I'm an immigrant. So I have a lot of days in which I feel like an expat and a lot of days in which I feel like an immigrant still. I feel that the language barrier is, of course, the biggest thing for me. I also don't speak Dutch very well. It's kind of very basic level, which I want to improve. And even if I spoke the language, I think the mere subtleties that every language has, and of course the subtleties you know how to use in your own language will always keep you a bit away from perfectly integrating. I don't know. I also feel that you need to create your own space somehow. You either want to perfectly integrate somewhere and forget everything about where you come from, or you can create some kind of bubble, which I'm trying right now, with things that you like and you agree with and bring comfort to you or challenge you in a positive way. And that's what I think everybody is doing nowadays with everything that's going on and all the busyness. We all kind of tend to create bubbles around us that comfort us in a way that make life make sense somehow. And I just traded a set of problems in Romania for another set of problems in the Netherlands, like not finding the best pizza place or being told to go back to my country, you Polish lady. So yeah, it's just another set of problems that I need to get accustomed to. I knew those problems. These are new problems. So I think the biggest thing with me is slowing down when I realized a lot of what I was experiencing as negative thoughts and emotions was due to a lot of busyness and doing a lot of things and always having to end up somewhere and never being where you need to be. I think when I started switching my mindset towards you are where you are and it's good, it's okay. You don't need to progress. You can just be there and thrive where you are, and you don't need more. I think that moving here to the Netherlands was somehow also the place where I thought things were like this, and also where I found myself creating my life in that way. The simple things and simplifying your life and actually getting joy out of the littlest action, like watering my plants or petting my cat, is something that brought the most joy to me. And I need to thank my dad for that, because his death taught me that nothing is promised. Tomorrow is not promised. So I try to do what brings me joy and pet my cat every day.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Theo Manusaride is an award-winning photographer. She does documentary, wedding, family, portrait, and business photography. Originally from Romania, she is based out of the Hague in the Netherlands. To learn more and connect with Theo, see the show notes. Again, be sure to sign up for the newsletter. We will be back on January 6th with a new season of all new stories. So if you'd like to keep connected in the meantime, see the show notes and sign up. Oh, and one last thing. If you like this show, take a moment and share an episode with a friend. It helps spread the word. This podcast is produced by me, Jamie Younger, and my husband, Pete Herkmans. Thanks so much for listening to If You Knew Me. We'll be back with you on January 6th.